I know, I came running in.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's now 9 o'clock, and I will now call the Tax Commission, Guam Tax Commission to order and ask for a roll call.
Roll call. Chairman, Senator Joseph Agustin. Vice Chairman, Speaker Benjamin Cruz. Minority Leader, Senator James Esperan. Economist, Mr. Joseph Bradley. Guam Society of Certified Public Accountant, Mr. Joe Arnett. Guam Banker Association, Mr. Baron Evaristo. Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Bobby Shringi. Women's Chamber of Commerce, Ms. Patricia Salas. Guam's Bar Association, Mr. Lawrence Baruch. Governor Guam Designee, Ms. Marie Benito. Guam's Congressional Delegate Designee, Mr. John Jr. Cabo. Office of Public Auditor Doris Flores Brooks.
Behalf of the Public Auditor.
Office of Attorney General of Guam, the Honorable Elizabeth Barrett Anderson. Department of Revenue and Tax, Director John Camacho. Department of Administration, Director Christine Balletto. The Bureau of Budget and Management Research, Director Lester Carlson. The Bureau of Statistics and Plans, Director Carl Dominguez. Department of Labor, Dr. Sherry Samabini. Guam Economic and Development Authority, Director Jay Rojas. Certified Public Accountant, Mr. Robert Steffi. And the University of Guam, Dr. Doreen Crisostomo.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, you probably got in your email late last night. If not, you have a copy of the minutes. I don't know if anybody was able to read it. You were able to read it? Turn on the speaker. No one.
Yes,
Okay.
I got the email and I briefly went through it.
So would you move?
Move to approve.
Move to approve?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yes. Press the mic.
Sorry, hi, this is Sam Abini. Just a few minor type of corrections, I think. I'm not sure if these are typos. Page 3. Excuse me, page 4. The top, and maybe Ms. Benito just can clarify. Just want to make sure it's the right name. That sentence. Is Austin correct? I'm not sure. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
That is Austin.
Yes.
Any reference to Austin?
Duenas with the State Clearinghouse?
Oh, Austin Duenas.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Maybe you might want to indicate his full name. That's just my recommendation, just to include his full name. I wasn't sure who was being referenced. That's it.
Okay, so then unless there's any objection, it'll stand approved with the administrative corrections to add the last name or first name that needs to be added. Dr. Abi? Okay. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, unfinished business. We have the standing rules. Does anybody want to move on that? If not, we'll move on to the next issue of unfinished business. Nobody wants to touch it. I'm blaming y'all. We have Director John Camacho, follow-up on reference to reaching out to the governor and the Guam State Clearinghouse for any federal assistance that may be available to help cover cost of the study. Did you get any response from them, or is the governor designee? Marie, do you have anything on that one?
Okay, I'm
Or maybe
sorry.
we can ask even John Calvo if there's any money on
Okay,
Congress side.
well, as I mentioned the last time, as far as the funding availability, we're going to go ahead and apply for the TAP grant, and the maximum amount is 500,000. However, the award won't be awarded until March. That's when the closing of the grant is going to be, and then possibly a month or two later is when we'll be notified if we were approved for the grant. So we're working on that. We're working towards that grant.
Mr. Calvo?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I did have a brief discussion with Deputy Director Benito, and we did a soft inquiry with the Congressional Budget Office, and we were informed that it's not specifically within their authority to issue out a grant or an analysis for the particular model that the Commission may be seeking. And if they were to do such an analysis, we're looking at 2 to 3 years out based on other analyses or basically projects that they're working on between House and Senate leadership. So we would recommend continuing with the TAP grant or reaching out to the Department of Interior, OIA, for other forms of technical assistance to look at this particular grant model.
Thank you, Mr. Calvo. I'd like to recognize that the Senator Spaldon has joined us, the minority leader. I guess the beauty of that unfinished business actually covers some of the old business from Mr. Calvo and Ms. Benito. So moving along on our agenda, the economic model now is actually geared towards Mr. Steffi and Ms. Benito. Who would want to take the lead on that one?
I'll have the honors. Thank you very much. Anyway, Bob and I have been working towards this. We've already got the ball rolling. We submitted a model, an economic model, to our vendor to see how much it will cost. So all he's going to do right now, they're going to do, is review it and give us a quote on how much it's going to cost. And we believe that it's best if we get the economic model done based on real-time data, data that we have, so that way it'll be actual and not estimated. Once we get all the changes going, then they can move on the programs.
Okay, so we won't know until how much longer, so we know what the cost could be.
Right, the cost and also the changes. That is still very up for debate in the Senate and the House at this point.
Okay. Now, would you be able to brief, or Mr. Steffi, would you like to brief? Ladies and gentlemen, we handed out a copy of the Heritage Foundation. You'll find the comparison of the House and the Senate on the tax bills that's out there. And as Ms. Benito and Mr. Steffi, and we'll be more than likely reaching out to the economists from both the Department of Labor and Mr. Bradley, and also the chambers of both the women and the General Chamber of Commerce, to participate in their discussion of the tax reform bills that's out there. But keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that this tax reform bill, if passed, doesn't go into effect until what, 2019 or 2020. It's not something that's going to happen in January.
Correct.
So I was going to ask the question, do we want to consider putting the question to the committee here, the commission, if we want to consider delink, but I've been advised that it'd be premature at this time. We'll wait for what happens in Congress, and we've got, I would say, less than 6 months to do something after that.
Yes.
Because if it's going to happen in 2019, it's going to come up fast. It'll be right after election, and that let it be known that all the tax issues that the government is asking, the governor's asking, and even the body of the Guam Legislature is considering, may have to take a hold. Because if this tax reform comes to play, whatever taxes we want to impose to the people of Guam may not be something favorable to consider. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that. And maybe, did you have something, John, you wanted to bring up?
When Congress passed those rates, I think it was effective after December 31st, 2017. So we don't know what's going to happen when the actual, tax reform really passed. So you know, if it does take in effect, those rates, you know, after December 31st, 2017, then you're going to start seeing some changes in the rates. So I don't know what's it going to be. I mean, I saw the tax cut, job cuts. I think it said something about those rates being effective after December 31st. I may be wrong. I'm not just. It's just something, I don't know, maybe Bob or Joe can clarify that.
Okay, we're going to pass that to you, Joe. Maybe you can comment to that. Mr. Arnett?
Well, I'm not sure I heard all of what John said, but if he's talking about the uncertainty of the tax reform, that's certainly up. We won't know until the very last minute what the tax reform looks like. It'll probably be done after the first of the year, but made retroactive to the beginning of the year. That's what they've done the last few years. The wild card is the Senate, and whether the Republicans have a small majority in the Senate and whether they will line up and support the House Republican bill or not. But I'm guessing, and it's just a guess, that we're going to see significant individual tax cuts in this new bill, and there'll probably be some corporate relief as well. So those are the things we'll be tackling going forward. And I expect it to be effective for 2018. 18.
Next year?
Yes,
Next year.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, you know, I know you discussed this Heritage Foundation analysis, right? So I'm not sure where it came from, but I would be remiss if I would caution the commission members to also consider other analyses that are out there. The Heritage Foundation is an extremely conservative foundation, our national foundation, so I would encourage the commission members to look at other analyses that are provided out there, especially simply because I don't want the commission members to be stuck on their particular recommendations that they have in reviewing and analyzing both the House and Senate versions of the tax reform bill.
Would you recommend any specific analysis we should also take a look at? You know, so,
Sure.
so we're not searching the web
right.
forever?
Okay, I'll be happy to provide a couple of links that I think are a little bit more balanced.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman?
Though we don't have the final version of either house, I was wondering if Revenue and Taxation could, I don't even mean ask to have it published, but to have ready a listing and analysis of the mix of taxpayers. Because as I listen to the discussion about what's happening in the House, they talk about under 30,000, between 30,000 and 75,000, above 75,000 single or I'm not asking you to tell me who is in which category, but can you at least have at the ready, I mean like tomorrow, so that if something's passed next week, you can say, this is going to affect 30,000 people under this category, under this. I'm not going to ask you to tell me. Just have it ready, because I know I've been trying to do an analysis, but I'm disabled because of the fact that I don't know what that mix is. And as I understand it, in previous attempts to try to get that number from you guys, it's somehow embargoed or cannot be provided to me because I...
No, we came up with some, you know, rough analysis. I think in the previous meetings, we did come out and basically look at the corporate changes, which is only a flat rate of 20%. And I think I mentioned that. And, you know, when we took the taxable income of all the corporations in 2015 and apply that rate, you know, there is going to be roughly around 35 to 40 million, I think I mentioned last time, reduction on the total tax. I think I mentioned that last time. And I also mentioned some of the effects on the individuals that was previously, you know, those proposals in the early stages. I did mention those things, and we are also looking at the basically the ones that's just passed recently, which is I think I have the tax cut and job creations. I think we have some estimations, but we want to try and basically, you know, what happens if, because right now the proposal in Congress that passed is a 7-tier down to a 4-tier rate. So we're actually looking at all the individuals, basically their taxable income, dissecting those taxable incomes down into those 4 rates. And we're doing that, and we're also looking at basically doubling the standard deductions and all these things, and also eliminating the alternative minimum tax as passed by Congress. So we're doing that now, but you know, we don't know what the true tax effect will be. We can throw out numbers, but you know, until the actual law pass, then you know, that's what we really need, is to get somebody to really work on it in details, because we're doing that now. You know.
Well, can we get something then? I mean, other than what you briefed the last meeting, can we get something? That's what the Vice Chairman is asking, is that just something that all of us can understand, that if it does follow this trend, the way Congress is asking, this is the impact. If it doesn't, that's the worst case, right? At least we'll know what the worst case is, because right now we're just guessing. We're trying to follow what some folks have put out in the media, Senator Nicholas, and everybody else is putting out, but we're not getting a number from you. And I think that's what the Vice Chairman is asking. We need to get something that you've got today. Because you're like Ms. Benito brought up, you've got real numbers. We're not playing with what could be. It's what, if it happened today, everybody's filed their taxes, so you already know the numbers. It's just putting the percentage in.
Like I said, in the corporate, that's basically what the number is.
It's about 50 to 70 million.
I mean, it depends, because we're using a tax year of 2015.
Okay.
We're in 17, so depending on the corporate taxable income, I'm assuming it should be climbing. Economy is getting better, so you know. But just based on 2015 tax return, we took the taxable income of all the corporations and applied that 20% rate. And that's the change. It's about $40 million. I mentioned that several times.
Good.
So it's the individuals that is very complicated. We're looking at what the effects are when you double the standard deductions, what the effects are when you increase the additional child tax credit by 60%. Now I think it's $1,600 is the max. So we have some numbers, but we really need to look at it and make sure that, you know, those numbers are, what we're doing right now is we're taking all these people's tax return and saying that rather than apply the 7th tier, we're going to apply the 4th tier. So these people individually that we're doing, it's going to be, you know, we're going to come up with some numbers. And, okay. and that's the quick way of doing, you know, the analysis. And even the alternative minimum tax, how many people were taking it back then, and now it's going to be repealed. What's the effect of that? So, but if this changed in Senate and the actual law, we just have to do another analysis again, because we don't know. There's some big differences between the House and the Senate.
Okay. And Ms. Benito, you're with Bob working with DMR to assist you in getting these numbers, fine-tuning it, right? Okay. Yes, we discuss that. Now, in the Chamber of Commerce, I know Bob's not here, and I met him yesterday. I think he chickened out today, knowing I'm going to ask him about his poll or the chamber, you know. So I'm going to ask you about your polls, and you probably didn't do one, but
no, we didn't. But what Bobby and I had decided we were going to do one poll for both chambers. We were going to make it so that we analyzed it the same way. We have not done that yet, but I will tell you we can do it before the end of the year. I think there were just a lot of things happening in September and October for both chambers. So, but we can do one before the end of the year, and we already have an idea of what we were going to say and how we were going to rank it. We just didn't put it out there.
Okay, because I know the businesses are gonna welcome the tax breaks, but the people of Guam may not welcome it as much as when the government has to figure out how to provide the service to the people. Okay, now we'll open the discussion. Anybody wanted to bring up anything for discussion?
Ken, I just wanted to point one thing out. I know I've been in the news quite a bit over this referendum requirement, and I just want everybody to understand that if you look at the statute carefully, there is a provision at the very end of the referenda as it on the referendum section as it relates to taxes, and it says when and if Guam delinks, any increase in these taxes, in these local taxes, will have to go to referenda. So unless somebody's thinking about repealing those sections, we also have to understand that any changes will need to have the vote of the electorate in all of those provisions. So I'm just cautioning everybody to please read that section, and maybe there might be a recommendation as to whether or not that section needs to be addressed. I'm not saying repeal it, I'm just saying addressed, and whatever the address means. But I'm just pointing out to everybody that as it currently stands, any delinking and any changes will require approval by referenda.
And you know, the beauty of that statement from the Speaker, the Vice Chair, is that this is the Tax Commission. And as the body considers any tax increases, I want to make sure that this body is able to say something. Because in line of what he mentioned, even though I supported the fuel tax, I'm wondering there's too much money in that system and they're not doing what they need to do out there. But any future taxes, don't expect me to support it right now unless this body wants, and we all agree that there's certain taxes we need to consider, then that's when I may change. Until otherwise, unless this body wants to make any comments about the law that considers that the electorate must decide the tax, please state it so that it's for the record. That the Tax Commission will take a stand in whatever direction we need to take. Yes, sir.
Mr. Vice Speaker, you're talking about provisions on the income tax?
Yes, there's that section on referenda for any increase in local taxes. Then the very next section talks about referendum being required in the approval of a general obligation bond. And then below that is another paragraph that says, if and when the Tax Commission recommends delinkage, the delinkage and any changes in taxes will have to be approved by the people in the referendum. So at some point, I'm just saying we all need to look at that, and maybe this commission can make a statement or a recommendation that we address it one way or another, either the recommendation to repeal. I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying that that's there, and please take that into account, and whether or not we'll be hamstringing ourselves of making any changes in the future if everything has to go to the electorate.
Does any of the members here have any comments they want to bring up? I know Carl brought out you have that report you had, that study you did, so does anybody want to make any comment to that? Or you want to hold back until the next meeting, right? Until we find out from Ms. Benito and Bob Steffi about the impact. But just understand, okay, as the clock ticks, the body has to consider that repeal or not, and it's got to go before the body. So if we consider delink, it's got to go before the electors. So we need to seriously have a conversation on that one. Yes, Mr. Camacho.
I'd just like to just make one comment. As we anticipate tax cuts, obviously what's going to happen, and if this thing goes through, I think what is the counterpart of the the tax cut, how the taxpayers actually going to utilize these extra dollars. Are they going to actually reinvest? Is it going to create more jobs? Is it going to, is the economy getting these extra tax dollars? What is he going to do? In other words, because I think that's the turning point. What this means is that it's going to create, grow the economy. It's going to create more jobs. It's going to create, more businesses and all these things. So I think my comment is that somebody has to start looking at that, because if we come to a point where we will have to decide whether to delete or not, I mean, if the taxes and the income tax are down, but your withholding increases because we hire, substantial number of employees, we're going to gain more on the withholding tax, in other words. So I think that's what the tax cut is, that reducing it and trying to grow the economy. So I think somebody has to start looking at that. That's my comment.
And I think that's where the chamber, the Women's Chamber and the Guam Chamber of Commerce would have to do their poll, because it's going to take its toll. Okay?
I'm very happy to hear the administration saying that it's going to grow the economy, because I've withheld my minimum wage increase, because in front page headline today, there's hours are cutting back. But if it's the belief of the administration that this is going to mean they're going to be investing, well, then they can invest in an increase in the wages of their employees.
Yes, that sounds great for everybody. I'd like to also make sure we recognize Mr. Spaldon representing the Attorney General. Is there anything else anybody else would like to bring up? Dr. Mabini.
I just wanted to ask, Mr. Chair, can we put together a tentative maybe timeline that may be tied to some maybe soft or hard action items, because versus coming back to the table, so that we can feel that sense of urgency for whoever would need to put together study, grant application. What is the anticipated timeline should the bill passes or whatnot, and its impact on Guam? I just believe this commission needs to have an actual physical timeline for us to use and guide us for actionable items.
And what would be your recommendation? Before we ask John and before we ask Marie and Bob, what would your recommendation be, so we can pose that to them to give us some good numbers?
Well, I mean, I believe in the discussion, and forgive me, the echo in the room kind of makes it hard for me to hear some of the conversations, but I think some dates were put forth, and if we could put that in a timeline and then use that to gauge, let's say, when a grant should or should not be applied for, when we should anticipate its arrival, and when we would like the scope of work to be completed, et cetera. I think it would just be best for this group to be able to have a working timeline. And again, it won't be etched in stone, but it'll be used as a guide so that we can progress toward making good decisions.
Yes, and I agree with you. Ms. Benito.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Sam. Okay, earlier I mentioned the TAP grant will be closed in March, and then possibly a month or two later, we'll be notified if we were granted if we got the award for the grant. So I believe the time frame would be March, April, May, possibly, before we get any money. And then at the same time, we have our vendor also working with the economic model. So I think, while that's moving simultaneously, we should have something hopefully solid by March, April, May. So if we want, and then we also have the research that still is ongoing. We still need the economists. Once we get the data, the good data, after we do the economic model, the economist still has to look at all the other aspects of that data and how would it affect the economy.
So you're looking at, the time frame we're looking at is March to get what?
No, the award ends in March, or
Okay.
Yes.
But can we get something more hard? I think that's what Dr. Mabini is asking for.
Yes.
Is from revenue and tax, we need to get something like, gosh, I'm looking at by December. I mean, I'm not saying that we need to have a meeting in December. I'm just saying that we got to have something so that we can email to each other all the data, and then everybody can input, so then on our next meeting, we're already comfortable in, are we going to pursue what the vice chairman mentioned, that maybe we need to recommend to repeal the issue of the electors deciding on taxes? Do we want to consider delink? On whatever direction we want to decide. Because I want to make sure that everybody is part of this decision. This is not going to be a chairman's decision. It's not going to be revenue and tax, but everybody's got to come to an agreement. Because Gita's going to feel the impact instantly. And all these cuts happen, they'll be like, I don't know where we're going to get a loan. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to get one thing clear. I am not proposing a repeal. I am saying this commission please address, and I put air quotes around it, address. I make a recommendation to address that section. I am not, I repeat again, not recommending the repeal, but whatever this body makes a recommendation on to address it, I guess we'll have to address it, but please do not say that I am recommending the repeal.
No, I apologize, Mr. Vice. I didn't mean that. I just wanted to make sure everybody understands that if we're going to recommend a repeal, we all are going to agree to it. At least majority will decide. And we all come to an agreement that if the majority decides, everybody's in agreement, regardless of which direction we're going. Now, I would actually like to welcome your economist, Dr. Mabini, to Marie, what you brought up about the economist, because you have an economist, and Mr. Bradley had even Gita has one? Or no? Oh. Who's? Carl has one also?
We have several that we could.
Okay. You have an economist in your group, right? Great. Then we can get all the economists, because I was hoping Joe Bradley was going to be here so he can talk about what he had, his summit, his workshop, and put those numbers to us, because I know not everybody attended it, because there's just so many things to attend on the same day.
Right. Well, perhaps the committee would be able to request maybe a preliminary feedback on a certain date, whether it's January before our meeting. I don't know whether that's too soon, as far as if there are these ongoing discussions, it'd be good to have, like, could we have a report or something preliminary to share with the committee, and then add to that when we get the grant, is that a direct technical assistance from an agency, or does that still have to be procured?
I believe it still has to be procured, and what we're going to do is hire, outsource a firm to do the economic study on it. All we're going to get from our vendor is the data, then he'll run with that data and look at all the other factors that's going to affect the economy.
Okay. And so, of course, that whole procurement process will have to be added into the timeline. And I just want to be preemptive.
Yes.
Okay.
Agreed. Understood.
And on reference to the date in January, even though I put it on the schedule, January 2nd, I think that won't work.
Too soon, right?
Yeah, probably not.
We'll probably look at, what, February?
Yes, February.
And if we look at February, we're looking at February 6th. Okay, so I'm just hoping that Revenue and Tax and yourself, with Bob Steffi and the economists, can come up with something even way before that. Whatever you can put together, please send it to me, email, so I can send it out to everybody. Then everybody can take a look at it and say, holy Toledo, where are we going? Because if Congress decides it by December to give everybody a Christmas present, that may not be a present that we want to enjoy here in Guam. Okay?
And I just want to put out one other thing, Mr. Chairman. The February 6th date is 6 days after the governor presents his budget for the next fiscal year. I would hope and I would think that the administration would have already done an analysis of what the Trump tax cuts are going to mean to our revenue before the submission of the next budget, which is the reason why I wanted to have a 2-year budget, to just get this out of the way.
Does anybody else want to bring up anything else? Ms. Tyrone, do you have anything from the Gita? Nothing, huh? Okay. Joe, you have nothing else? Okay, and then we'll be expecting the poll, probably by December. It'll be a Christmas present to everybody, where the chamber stands. Okay. And Marie and John, would you have anything from the Congresswoman that you want to bring up?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Okay. Okay, there being none, do I have a motion to adjourn? And our next meeting will be February 6th, okay? We're all in agreement, February 6th, 6 days after the governor's budgets.
Yes.
Do you have a motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn the meeting.
There being no objection, this meeting is now adjourned. It is now 9:38. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.